Welcome to another edition of Intuitive Eating Tips with Taylor. My name's Taylor, and I'm a non-diet registered dietitian. And with the help of intuitive eating, I teach women how to create guilt-free eating habits with confidence and ease. For today's intuitive eating tip with Taylor, I'm going to talk all about the 4 different types of hunger that you can experience, how they can come up in your own life, how you can work through them in your own life, some examples, and talk about why it is important to honor all those different types of hunger. So if you're someone who is, going through your journey of trying to learn how to honor your own hunger, or you're someone who thinks that intuitive eating is just the eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full diet, this is for you, because I'm going to talk about all the different types of hunger that can come about and why intuitive eating isn't just the stop when you're hungry or start when you're hungry, stop when you're full diet. So the first hunger I want to talk about is physical hunger. So this one's pretty straightforward. It is the hunger that you feel when your body is biologically hungry. And basically, what your body is doing or your cells are doing is sending you some signals through a hormone known as ghrelin, saying, hey, we're hungry. Our cells need glucose, which is what carbs turn into when they're digested into your body. And so that is that physical sensation of hunger is coming on because, again, your body is sending those signals to you to say they need that glucose, that energy to work and to provide you with the things that you need. And so honoring this type of hunger is important because it can help you create more consistent eating habits, because when you don't honor your physical hunger, it does tend to lead to overeating later on. And so I want to talk about some subtle signs of hunger so that you can start eating when you're physically hungry at that comfortable hunger instead of the hunger that feels like you're over hungry or you've waited too long to eat. Because a lot of times I think when people think of physical hunger, they think of signs such as your stomach growling, or maybe you're shaky, or you have low blood sugar, you're shaky, or you are dizzy because of that. Or again, you're feeling those hunger pangs. I feel a lot of times that's what people think hunger is. But if you are feeling those symptoms, that means you've waited too long to eat. That means you're overly hungry and your body is basically screaming at you at this point and saying, give us some food now. So some subtle signs to look for in order to start eating at that comfortable hunger level. So a lot of times just even thinking about food is a sign that you might need it and are hungry. So you might be thinking, well, Taylor, I think about food all the time. Well, maybe you are, maybe you are hungry. Maybe you're not feeding yourself enough, and that's why you're thinking about it all the time. But again, just that subtle sign of starting to think about food is your body's way of saying, we're thinking about it. We're definitely getting there. We're not to the point yet where we're super hungry, but we're definitely thinking about it. So this is always great to start thinking about, okay, well, what am I hungry for? And really thinking about that you're going to want to eat, pretty soon within the next 20, 30 minutes usually. But another subtle sign that you can look for is, if you're lacking focus or you're lacking energy, your mind isn't super clear. It's hard to focus on whatever you're working on in front of you. Or maybe you're just more irritable or hangry, I like to call it. And again, maybe you're not feeling physically hungry, but you're also just feeling those symptoms of, again, the lack of focus, the lack of energy, or the irritability. And those can all be signs of that hunger coming on as well. Or, if it's just been a few hours since you last ate, and this really depends on you as a person and what you do throughout your day, whether you are someone who sits down more or you're on the go and on your feet a lot more, this really will matter and it'll be different for everyone. But a lot of the times, if it has been a few hours since you last ate, it's always good to just check in with your hunger and see where those levels are at. Maybe you're hungry, but you didn't really notice it because you've been really busy with stuff, or, you're just not paying attention to it. And so just keeping that in mind to, again, just knowing that's a subtle sign or a subtle thing that you can do to check in with your body in order to eat at a comfortable hunger level. So again, that is the first form of hunger, again, that physical hunger. So the second form of hunger I want to talk about is practical hunger. So practical hunger is the type of hunger where you will eat in order to be prepared for being hungry. Now, I know that might sound silly, but it'll make sense. So let's say you have a meeting at 1 o'clock with your boss, but your lunchtime is 12 to 1. It's 12 o'clock and you really do not feel super hungry right now, but you also have not ate anything since breakfast. It's been a few hours by now. Yes, you don't feel hungry now, but by the time it is 1 o'clock, you are definitely going to be hungry. But guess what? You're going to be in your meeting and you're not going to be able to eat some food right now. So, using some practical hunger, while you may not be physically hungry, you are going to decide to eat at 12 p.m. anyways, because in the long run that that's going to help you get to your meeting and get through that meeting at 1 p.m. with having that energy, the focus, and you won't have to be thinking about food at that time. So, again, practical hunger, typically we're eating when we're not necessarily physically hungry. In order to prepare for a time when we will be physically hungry, but won't be able to have the access to food that we want. And this is not always the most satisfying way to honor your hunger. And I know that that can be hard for some people, but again, implementing this practical hunger when you need to is important so that you can stay on track with your consistent eating habits so you don't overeat later on when you finally get the chance to. And then when you are actually sitting down to eat a meal, when you are physically hungry, just be super mindful and enjoy that meal and how satisfying it feels, knowing that you don't always get to have that type of satisfying meal all the time. So taking advantage when you are physically hungry too. Okay, so now we talked about two different forms of hunger. There's two more. So the next one I want to talk about is emotional hunger. Or emotional eating is what a lot of people like to refer to it as. And I want to say that this is not a bad thing. We tend to make emotional eating a negative thing. And then when it happens, we feel bad for it and it just spirals. And the guilt and the shame are not necessary, but we put it on ourselves because of this. And so emotional hunger is, that type of hunger where we eat when we are trying to cope with typically a negative emotion. There are times when we may use food in a more positive way to celebrate emotions, like if you're happy for something or you're celebrating something, but typically emotional hunger is for a negative emotion. And so what I'll say with emotional hunger is a couple things. I always encourage you to dig a little deeper when it comes up. Always ask yourself, am I actually physically hungry, or is there something going on that this emotional hunger is coming up and it's a sign that I need to address something else? So are you feeling anxious about a test coming up? Are you feeling sad because you maybe it's the anniversary of you losing a loved one, or whatever it may be, the reason you feel sad for. But again, getting in check and asking yourself, how you're feeling. Why am I turning to food to cope with something? Why am I looking for something to make me feel better? And address it in a way that solves the problem or works towards solving the problem, because at the end of the day, emotional eating isn't going to solve the problem. It might make you feel better in the moment, but it's not going to solve the problem. So again, just making sure you address what's really going on and taking that emotional hunger as a sign that there's something to address in the first place, and not being angry or judgmental of yourself, but just being curious towards whatever is going on. Can take a lot of that guilt and that shame away. And the last thing I'll say about emotional hunger is I always encourage you to honor it from time to time. There can be times when you know that you're emotionally eating, but in this moment, you know what, this is making me feel good. I do know that it's not going to help me in the long run, but right now it is making me feel good. It is okay to use emotional hunger from time to time, but the important thing is that you have other coping mechanisms set up for yourself so that you're not emotionally eating all the time and only using food as your sole coping mechanism. And so last hunger that I want to talk about is taste hunger. So taste hunger is just kind of the hunger you feel when you're really craving something specific, but maybe you're not necessarily physically hungry. You can definitely be physically hungry and have that taste hunger where you're really craving something specific. And again, I always encourage you to just honor this craving as best as you can. When you honor the craving, it's over, it's done with. Whereas if you try to resist the craving, a lot of the times it just amplifies that craving and it gets louder. And then by the time you give in, you're overeating basically. So again, just try and honor the craving as best as you can if you're physically hungry. And you can use critical thinking skills as well. And you can say, what I'm eating right now or what I'm craving isn't necessarily super nutritiously dense. And I do kind of want to add some more nutrition while I still enjoy whatever the satisfying food is that I'm craving, just so I know it's going to help me feel a little bit better. And again, that is something you can decide in the moment and use your critical thinking skills to decide for yourself. But you could always just eat the food that you're craving all by itself too, and that can be fine as well. But if you are experiencing taste hunger and you're not physically hungry, so let's say that you just finished eating dinner and you really want something sweet afterwards, but you are definitely full from that dinner, like you can feel it, you are. Again, use your critical thinking skills. You can really make the choice here. You can decide to say, you know what, I really want something sweet. So I'm going to be super mindful. I'm going to take a couple bites of this cookie and just really savor it and be mindful. And I'm going to decide after these couple bites if I want to finish it or if I just want to be done. And so again, you can really just experience it. And if you decide you want to finish the cookie, but know it's going to make you feel uncomfortably full, understand that uncomfortable full feeling is going to pass, and that you just have a lot of food in your stomach right now and it will pass. But just honor it, and knowing that you can say too, you know what, I'm going to have this one cookie, but I really don't want to feel any more uncomfortable than this. So I'm not going to have any more after this. Or you can decide again, I'm going to have a couple bites. I really don't want to eat anymore. I do feel pretty uncomfortable already. I feel like if I eat more, I'm going to really be past my limit. Then you can decide to stop. So again, it's always your choice when it comes to not just taste hunger, but every hunger. It's always your choice on what you want to do with it. But knowing that you get to make the choice and take into consideration anything you want to take into consideration when it comes to honoring all those different forms of hunger. So the last thing I'll say for those different types of hunger when it comes to those different things that you're going to feel with them. Like I said, I always encourage you to honor all those types of hunger, because they all are valid. None of them are bad. None of them are good. They all come up for a reason. And the more you can honor them, the more they won't control your life. And it's very powerful to have just more of that sense of control over what you're eating and the choices that you can make around food. So there you have it for this edition of Intuitive Eating Tips with Taylor. I would love to know if you have an experience with any of these different types of hunger, or if you experience one more than the other and you're needing some support on digging a little bit deeper. Go ahead and leave any comments, questions in the chat or the comments below, and I will see you at the next Intuitive Eating Tips with Taylor.